Okay, good morning. Thank you for coming today. It really is an honor to have the opportunity to present our research with you. Firstly, I would like to just acknowledge that this conference is situated on the traditional territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Coast Salish peoples, and we are guests of the Indigenous people of this land. So just a bit of background to start. Globally, sex workers continue to experience a high burden of HIV, with significant heterogeneity within and across settings. Last year, the Lancet series on HIV and sex work was launched in Melbourne, including work by our team highlighting the importance of structural and community-level determinants in both increasing and mitigating HIV risk. We know that sociostructural factors such as stigma, discrimination, criminalization, and violence continue to play a key role in shaping the HIV epidemic. These factors can heighten risk for HIV and have been consistently linked to lower rates of condom use, barriers to accessing HIV prevention and treatment services, and morbidity and mortality. In recent years, research has demonstrated the success of multi-pronged structural approaches to HIV prevention, ones that aim to improve socio-environmental factors, which have been linked to significant advancements in health outcomes for sex workers, including increasing rates of condom use. The World Health Organization, with UNAIDS and the Network of Sex Work Projects, published guidelines in 2012 that recommend scaling up structural interventions that enhance sex worker-led community empowerment. So some of the most well-documented structural interventions have been led by sex workers in India, such as the Sonagachi Project and the Ashudaya Avahan Collective. These approaches focus on improving social and economic inequalities by addressing barriers within larger social, legal, and policy environments. And the main feature is really community empowerment. Kerrigan and colleagues' 2014 review highlights the defining features of community empowerment, which are approaches that are community-led, recognize sex work as work, and are committed to ensuring health and human rights. The level of social cohesion, so feelings of mutual support, trust, and solidarity among workers, was found to be a key component and marker of empowerment. There has been substantial evidence from lower and middle-income countries demonstrating that improving social cohesion can be a powerful determinant of successful HIV prevention, yet there are large gaps in data globally outside of a few key settings. Despite more than 2 decades of grassroots organizing in Canada, including the sex worker-led charter challenge to the Supreme Court, we still know little about the role that sex worker organizing plays in mitigating HIV risk, especially in high-income settings. Similar to many other countries, our federal government has ignored evidence and moved to implement new legislation, passed in December, which criminalizes clients for the first time in history and anyone who materially benefits from sex work. This model of demand criminalization really perpetuates the risks and harms by forcing sex workers to work in more isolated and hidden spaces and severely limits the ability to work together. So despite evidence that social cohesion can be beneficial, there is limited understanding of the community-level processes that shape behavior among sex workers here in the global north. Therefore, our study objective was to longitudinally examine the impact of social cohesion among sex workers on risk of client condom refusal in Vancouver, Canada. So data for this study were drawn from a community-based prospective cohort of sex workers in Vancouver, known as AISHA. AISHA was initiated in 2009 and consists of over 800 street and off-street sex workers across the city, and has a community advisory board of over 15 community sex work and HIV agencies. Eligibility criteria for participants included women 14 years of age or older who've exchanged sex for money in the last 30 days. Participants were recruited through outreach to street and indoor sex work venues, as well as online, and complete an interviewer-administered questionnaire at enrollment and biannually, as well as voluntary HIV and STI testing by a project nurse. Interviewers, as well as AISHA outreach and nursing staff, are experiential, including both current and former sex workers. So our main outcome of interest was a time-updated measure of client condom refusal, defined as responding yes to coerced into not using a condom for vaginal, anal, or oral sex by one-time or regular clients in the last 6 months. Our main independent variable of interest was perception of social cohesion, and this was assessed using Lippman, Kerrigan, and colleagues' social cohesion scale. And this is a multi-item index that measures levels of mutual aid, trust, solidarity, and support among workers. To assess if social cohesion was independently correlated with client condom refusal, we constructed a multivariable confounding model, adjusting for time-fixed variables at baseline, such as Aboriginal ancestry and migration status, and time-updated measures at follow-up, including individual-level variables and those that reflect the social environment, such as homelessness, drug use, physical or sexual violence by clients, and primary place of soliciting and servicing clients. In Vancouver, the level of social cohesion was based on a response to the 12 items on a 5-point scale ranging from strongly agree, which was given a score of 4, to strongly disagree, which was given a score of 0. The 12-item scores were then summed to create a continuous measure for social cohesion, with the lowest possible score being 0 and the maximum being 48. The scale has been previously adapted and validated in lower and middle income countries, as well as among indoor sex workers by our group in Canada, where a high level of internal consistency was indicated. So we found that of the total 654 sex workers, 1/3 reported events of client condom refusal over the 3-year study period. Sex workers reported a medium level of social cohesion, given that the median score was 24 and the maximum possible score was 48. The median age was 34 years, with higher rates of client condom refusal among younger sex workers. More than 1/3 had Aboriginal ancestry, with lower rates of client condom refusal than non-Aboriginal sex workers. More than half of sex workers serviced clients in indoor locations, such as in-call massage parlors or brothels, and 43% serviced clients in outdoor spaces. Client condom refusal was found to be higher among street-based sex workers than those soliciting clients indoors or independently, and 12% of participants in the study were HIV positive. So this table shows the unadjusted and adjusted odds ratios for the effect of social cohesion on client condom refusal in the last 6 months. As you can see in the final multivariable model, higher levels of perceived social cohesion among sex workers retained a direct and independent effect on reduced client condom refusal after adjusting for place of soliciting and age. To further explain this association, we found that with every 1-point increase in the social cohesion score, the average odds of client condom refusal decreased by 3%. So what this indicates is that the social environment shapes HIV-related outcomes for sex workers, and that higher levels of mutual support, trust, and solidarity increase sex workers' capacity to better control their risks for HIV, including their ability to negotiate condom use with clients. So we can see that social cohesion is a key part of the community empowerment process that can challenge structural inequalities and shape interpersonal and individual level behaviors that ultimately reduce the risk for HIV among sex workers. In conclusion, our study findings highlight that social cohesion and the ability for sex workers to work together and create their own networks is critical for mitigating HIV risks with clients. Our study demonstrates that increased social cohesion among sex workers has a direct protective effect against client condom refusal and really aligns with other global work showing that collectivization or social participation among sex workers is inversely associated with HIV risk factors, including access to HIV testing, social discrimination, and violence. This is the first study to examine the independent effect of social cohesion on client condom refusal among sex workers in the global north, and underscores the importance of enhancing community-led structural interventions to HIV. It's important to note that in settings where sex work is criminalized, sex workers have a reduced ability to negotiate condom use and are at a higher risk for violence and transmission of HIV. And so our findings really highlight the need for a legal and structural framework that promotes collectivization and the ability of sex workers to work together. Finally, I would just like to acknowledge our investigators, our research and administrative support, as well as our Community Advisory Board and partners. And this work is supported by the U.S. National Institutes of Health, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, and MAC-AIDS. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. That was fantastic. This paper is now open for questions and comments. There are 8 microphones in the room. If you could please go to a mic and please make sure you tell us who you are before you make your comment or ask your question. Mic number 1, please.
Hi, my name is Anna Forbes. I'm an independent consultant based in Washington, D.C. It was interesting to me that you mentioned that the ability to insist on condoms seemed to be greater among sex workers of indigenous ancestry. Mm-hmm. I wondered if there was any thought or any suggestion that possibly greater levels of solidarity among sex workers of indigenous ancestry may have provided the support that made it more feasible for them to insist on condoms?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for this question. We found that to be a very interesting finding as well, because I mean, usually you see the opposite. Really all I can say at this point is that this is where more qualitative research could really come in to flesh this out and understand how these are linked. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting finding and definitely the opposite of what we would expect. But as you said, it could be maybe there is more social solidarity among Aboriginal sex workers. That's definitely a possibility.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mic number 3, please.
Good morning. My name is Eric Poloy. I'm a director of sexual health in the adult film industry in California. Oftentimes, and this is a little bit of an open-ended question also to the panel, oftentimes sex work includes adult film performers, and I wonder if there's any data on that. I love what you did here, and I love this research. Lambda Legal and ACLU are very heavily working on legalizing sex work also within California to reduce those barriers that we see creating these problems here. But I also just quickly wanted to point out that within the adult film industry, performers test for HIV RNA every 14 days in order to reduce risk of transmission and therefore create another level of prevention. And I guess to make my question very short is whether you consider adult film performers to be part of sex workers in this sense, or if there is a more refined definition of it.
Thanks. In this setting, I believe that we do not include adult film workers among our participants. One thing to note is that we do outreach to a wide range of sex work environments, and these include outdoor and indoor locations, as well as sex workers who work independently, so those who work online. But there is a large possibility that some of these more independent working sex workers may be underrepresented in this study, and that may very well include sex workers who do adult film as well. So thank you.